everyone. Welcome to the Leaders Lounge. I am, of course, your host, Dawn Morris of the World Class Training Institute, where our mission is to maximize human capital through the delivery of leadership and professional development training programs. The Leaders Lounge, which is our podcast, is an outgrowth of the World Class Training Institute, and it's a space for leaders to come and energize themselves, get good nuggets of leadership information, wisdom, tools to help them strengthen as they lead themselves and lead others. In addition to that, we have, and you see, for those people who are always following and subscribed to us, you notice we are going through some changes in our studio background. So here, of course, last week or the last time I showed, we had the sign. Now we've added our book, which is, or my book, which is Unpacking Agape, the 7 Languages of Intentional Leadership, which you can go and grab at worldclasstraining.net/agape. It's full, again, of leadership goodness. It talks about the differences when you're going from being an individual contributor to a leader of people, or what I call 3D leadership and what that should look like. And then it also talks about the 7 languages, or what I call languages, which are behaviors, because I always say the best way for languages to show up is by doing. And so the behaviors that we outline in Unpacking Agape are 7. And they speak to how a leader is going to show up if they are best serving their team and their constituents. So pick that up at Unpacking Agape at worldclasstraining.net/agape. And then the other thing is, of course, we just recently passed 100 subscribers. Yay! That may sound like a little, but let me tell y'all, it's a lot. It takes a lot to run a podcast. It takes a lot to be consistent. It takes a lot to grow the channel organically. And so I'm so pleased that we have gotten to over 100. Help us to grow even more by going ahead and subscribing right now to the channel so that you can be notified every time we upload some more great information for you all to grow as leaders. Now, today is going to be a great show. It's one that I never thought that I would be having, because the person who we are going to discuss today has shown herself through the media outlets. And of course, I've even met her momentarily at Nearest Distillery, as well as the National Museum for African American Music, where she and her husband were on the stage really talking about how they were able to start Nearest Distillery. And so when I saw the article about Fawn Weaver, who is the CEO of Nearest Distillery here in Shelbyville, Tennessee, having the business Uncle Nearest go into receivership, I was stunned, to say the least. And I think a lot of other people have been stunned as well. Just for those people who do not know what Nearest Distillery is, or what Uncle Nearest is, Uncle Nearest is the brainchild of Fawn Weaver, born out of the ideal that she should share the story of Nearest Green, who worked for Jack Daniel several years ago, and is said to have been a major player in the establishment of Jack Daniel's whiskey. And so when I say major player, I believe in terms of like helping to develop the whiskey that is Jack Daniel's, that came from Nearest Green, according to the stories that Fawn Weaver read and then acted upon and built Nearest Distillery, which is a beautiful facility in Shelbyville, Tennessee. So even though it's in receivership, hopefully it comes out of receivership. We're going to talk a little bit more about that momentarily. But if you're in the Nashville area, you still want to go by and see Nearest Green Distillery. They also have Humble Baron there, which is the largest bar in the world. So it's another great place, great food there. Just everything about it is wonderful. I've been there a couple of times for they used to have a Christmas event. I don't think they had it last year, but again, beautiful facility, great, wonderful story. This Fawn Weaver and her husband seem to be just a power couple and people who have really done great things to build the Uncle Nearest brand. So, saw in the news a couple of days ago that Uncle Nearest was ordered by the judge to go into receivership. And so for those people who don't know what receivership is, let's talk about that momentarily. So for a moment. So a receivership is a legal process in which a neutral third party, the receiver, is appointed by a court to take custody, control, and management of property, assets, or a business. So in this case, Fawn Weaver's company, Uncle Nearest, has been appointed by a court and taken over as a business entity, which means that Fawn Weaver no longer has control of Uncle Nearest in terms of its operations and its fiduciary responsibilities from what I was reading. Now, Fawn Weaver and Keith Weaver, her husband, are allowed to still remain the face of Uncle Nearest because they said that's good for the brand, but they are not allowed to run the operation at this point. Now, why did this happen? Well, from what I read, the Nearest Green or Uncle Nearest has defaulted on several loan obligations, some of which are payments, some of which are other collateral prove-ups that they were supposed to show that, and in total, everything amounts to about $108 million in defaults. There are also, I also read that there was some misquoting of the number of barrels that they had. And I guess the barrels are supposed to be a part of the collateral of the organization. And the numbers that they gave were inconsistent with their actuals, which is not good if in fact that is the case. The other piece of information that I read was that there apparently is some type of loan deal. And again, this is not my area totally of expertise, but I'm going to just share what I read so that I can, help everybody understand kind of what was going on in the background. Apparently there's something related to a house that was bought on Martha's Vineyard, and the money that was used was not monies that were supposed to be used based on whatever their loan agreement is. And there's plenty of information out on Google about this. So you can go ahead and read all of this information for yourselves. But based on all of this, on August the 14th, a receivership was ordered for Uncle Nearest, which means that Fawn Weaver is no longer in control of the business that she started in 2017. I believe it's 2017. I'm just checking to make sure. It's 2017. Let me make sure that's correct. They founded Uncle Nearest in 2016 after she read a New York Times article about Nathan Nearest Green. So 2016. So they're in about their 9th year of business now. And so it's not a great thing. And so as a leader, this is the Leaders Lounge. I had to think about, how does this happen? How does this happen? And interestingly, we're also with my church reading a book called The Motive, which is a great book by Patrick Lencioni. And that book talks about the difference between reward leadership and responsibility leadership. And sometimes it's a parable that starts off where the CEO is talking to another CEO, and one CEO is trying to help the other one who doesn't even really understand that he has a concern, and the concern is that he really operates from a place of reward leadership versus responsibility leadership. So what is reward leadership? Reward leadership is the leader that wants to be the face, that wants to do the good fun stuff, but doesn't want to take the responsibilities that are associated with being in leadership. And so when you're talking about what I thought as I considered how this could possibly happen, as the chief executive officer of Uncle Nearest, Fawn Weaver had to keep her eye on everything. Keep her eye on everything. So what does that mean? So it doesn't mean that she should have micromanaged everyone, but it did mean that she needed to have a constant, consistent checks and balances over every person and every department that was responsible for making the system of Uncle Nearest run smoothly. Why am I saying that? Well, the CFO is the person who's being brought in as the person of blame for this. And that person's name is Mike Senzaki. I want to make sure I say his name right. Mike Senzaki. Senzaki. And so he has since lost his job with Uncle Nearest, and they're saying that he is the person who is responsible for the financial or fiduciary missteps that have happened at Uncle Nearest. Now, that's fair. You know, he's the chief financial officer. We can say that, but as the chief executive officer, Fawn Weaver was responsible for the first time that something looked awry, making sure that she was all on top of it so that it could not get to this situation. Because you don't just go into receivership. There are, as I read the article, a couple of articles on what has been happening, there have been several requests for information that have gone either delayed or unanswered. There have been several other payments that have been missed that should have been paid. So again, when you go into receivership, it's not that, oh, I missed a payment last month, or, oh, I forgot to give information that I was supposed to give to my lenders just last week, and now all of a sudden they're going to take me to court. It doesn't work like that. There have been a number of requests by their lender, who is the Farm Credit Bureau, I think that's Farm Credit, yes, Farm Credit, who asking and trying to get information from Uncle Nearest, and it has gone unanswered. So as the leader, Fawn Weaver has to be held accountable. And again, I love Uncle Nearest. I believe that the grounds that it's on are absolutely gorgeous. When I went to the Christmas tree lighting, absolutely gorgeous a couple of years ago. Absolutely gorgeous. But you've got to take care of the business if you are a leader. So what I want to talk a minute about what it looks like to really effectively delegate, because that becomes a challenge for a lot of leaders. When you are leading, you have to understand the difference between responsibility and accountability. Responsibility and accountability. So what's the difference? So when you are delegating, and I teach a whole class on the delegation dilemma, which talks about the whole process that leaders should go through to delegate. So if you're interested in that, and you should be, you want to go to worldclasstraining.net and then just go to the bottom and schedule a meeting with me, because your teams need to know how to delegate effectively. And there is a process for effective delegation. So that's that. Now, when you're talking about responsibility versus accountability, What does that look like? And I'm going to stop this scrolling for a moment because I really want everybody to focus here. So, responsibility is the emphasis on fulfilling obligations. It's about performing assigned roles diligently and ensuring that specific tasks are taken care of. So, if we're talking about Mr. Senzaki, Mike Senzaki, who was the chief financial officer, he was indeed responsible for ensuring that the barrels count was accurate. He was responsible for making sure that the payments were submitted to Farm Credit in a timely manner. He was responsible for ensuring that the loan that was used for Martha's Vineyard was not taken from the wrong area. He was responsible for ensuring that the fiduciary tasks associated with running a successful Uncle Nearest were done accurately and efficiently. Responsibility. Accountability is the emphasis on ownership and answerability. An accountable person takes ownership of the results, whether positive or negative, and is prepared to explain or report on them. Responsibility, that person is the person to whom you are delegating. Accountability, that is the person who has to answer for whatever tasks were delegated. As leaders, sometimes we do not understand that just because you have given somebody else the responsibility of taking care of the task, it does not absolve you of being accountable for the positive and the negative if in fact things go wrong. So in this particular instance, as they are blaming Mr. Senzaki, and I hear that there may even be a lawsuit against him, the persons who are in the news, the persons who have to answer to this are Fawn Weaver and her husband, Keith Weaver. Why? Because they are the ones who are listed as the owners of Uncle Nearest. So as leaders, we have to be very careful with how and to whom we are giving responsibility. Because at the end of the day, when we have to stand before whoever our stakeholders are, we are the ones who are held accountable. And so I have watched and seen a couple of the Instagram posts since this has come out about this situation. Of course, well, not of course, but in case for those who don't know, right now, Ms. Weaver is under a gag order. So she is not supposed to be talking about this because they don't want it played out in social media. So I've seen, she said made a couple of Instagram posts that speak at it, but not on it. What I'm not seeing yet is the level of accountability for what has taken place. And when I say that, the last post I saw, she was talking about how the revenue in several states is up by, double digit percentage points, which is amazing, right? In my view, if in fact that's the case, why are we not paying our bills on time, right? So I recommend, if she's listening, that she follow the gag order and just kind of reset. Because as leaders, when things happen, we have to sit back. And even if, again, it wasn't at our direct hands, we have to be accountable and take responsibility and accountability for what we could have done differently? Responsibility and accountability for what we could have done differently. Why do I say both in this instance? Because responsibility, remember, emphasis on fulfilling obligations. So it's about thinking through, where did I, as a leader, or did I not step up and fulfill my obligations as the leader of the company? Accountability is that emphasis on ownership and answerability. So it's after we think through that, then we take ownership for whatever happened and then clearly answer to our stakeholders and our constituents for whatever steps took place. So when you're thinking about delegating, leaders, this is what I want you to take away today. I want you to take away from this situation these facts. As leaders, you typically have a team, and on that team, you have the ability to delegate tasks. Delegate does not mean dumping. And dumping means that you just give a task. You don't really come back and think about it from a professional development standpoint, from a standpoint where you're working through whatever hurdles the person to whom the tasks are delegated to make sure that everything runs smoothly. You're checking in on dates along the way to make sure that the mini goals on the way to the big goal is met. Or are met. And you also don't need to micromanage. Delegation is a process of you sharing responsibility, because ultimately, especially as a CEO, all of the responsibilities are yours. You have delegated the responsibility to someone, but you have to understand that you are still the one who is held what? Accountable. Accountable. As I stated, there is a complete process to how to delegate. A lot of leaders, unfortunately, when they're given the role of the leader title, they're not really taught and trained how to delegate effectively, which is, of course, again, one of the things that we do. I suggest to anyone who is over a number of leaders and is a leader themselves to pursue getting trained and coached in how to delegate effectively. Because when the rubber meets the road and that person or persons has not done what they're supposed to do, you have to be able to give a good account for what you did to help make sure that person was doing what they were supposed to do. It's not to say that sometimes people don't just go rogue. Mr. Senzaki may just be somebody who went rogue, but because of the number of months that Farm Credit was trying to connect, was trying to get information, was trying to collect payment, it tells me that there was a breakdown in the delegation of the responsibilities of this person. So we wish Mrs. Weaver, and Mr. Weaver well as they are going through this. I hope that everyone else takes the leadership lesson in this and really thinks about what it looks like to effectively delegate. It's two pieces: responsibility, accountability. You can make everybody responsible, but at the end of the day, you are the person who has to be held accountable. So, pick up our book, Unpacking Agape, the 7 Languages of Intentional Leadership, at worldclasstraining.net/agape. Please make sure to like and subscribe to this, episode, subscribe to this channel. And for all of your leadership and professional development needs, make sure to connect to us at worldclasstraining.net. Just go to the bottom, fill out the contact form for whatever you need for us to help you to improve personally and professionally. And we are here to assist you. And above all else, remember, at the World Class Training Institute, when you are better, we are absolutely better. Take care.